Yes, it's March 16th and time is ticking. We are almost 2 weeks away from Passover, and that's from the traditional date of Passover. There's another calendar which will have it 2 weeks after that. So we're within a month of everybody getting done with Passover. So I'm excited about the time coming up. I'm excited about the opportunity to be able to lead a Passover Seder over at McBride Church of Christ here in McBride, which is just as far as the crow flies. I guess it's probably 5, 7 miles straight as an arrow. So it's not very far away at all. And praying that the hearts of people will be open and they'll be able to um, really see Christ in the Passover like they've never seen him before. Well, we're starting the book of Leviticus. Leviticus begins with the word Vayikra. Vayikra is the Hebrew term, and he called. And what's interesting, and we've seen this before, is that when you spell out Vayikra, the aleph at the end is small. It's very, very small. And so you would say, well, why is it so small? Because the aleph is the letter of God. It's a powerful letter. It's an energetic letter. It's full of life. It's full of creation. But the small a, and he called to Moses. This is a picture of Moses and humility, not being like God, but being humble. And what's interesting, just as in the book of Exodus, we had a specific passage that didn't have Moses' name in it. In this Torah portion, we don't have Aaron's name specifically mentioned. Oh, now there's the reference to the priest, but as far as Aaron's name being mentioned, not there. So it's very interesting how in one Torah portion, Moses' name is not there. In the Torah portion, when he's interceding for the people on the mountain, and then here, when the korbanot are being addressed and laid out for the people, that Aaron's name is not being mentioned. Because it's the word Vayikra, and he called, the word and connects it directly back to Exodus chapter 40. And that command in Exodus chapter 40, okay, to build the tabernacle just as the Lord commanded Moses, and the people did it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They did it step by step by step, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle, so much so that Moses couldn't even get in. Now that creates a problem, as I share with you in this morning's study, because if God's going to come and dwell in the midst of the people, then doesn't make any sense that the people wouldn't be able to come to God. I mean, to stay at a distance, it's no different than being at Mount Sinai and God being up on top of the mountain. So in the book of Exodus, if I go back just a few chapters and I go back to chapter 29, then I'll get a glimpse of something that's going to be really, really important. So I'm going back to Exodus chapter 29, verse 37. It says, 7 days you shall make an atonement for the altar and sanctify it, and it shall be an altar most holy. Whatever touches the altar shall be holy. Now that's going to be important. 7 days the altar was sanctified. It was set apart for a specific purpose. It was made to be holy, but it's not just holy, because it's called the most holy. It's the same as the Holy of Holies, the Kadosh Kedoshim. So I want you to think about this. In the outer court, where the brazen altar is and the brazen laver is, whoever comes in contact with the brazen altar, it's going to be just like that individual was in the Holy of Holies in the presence of God. Because at the altar, God promised that whoever comes to the altar, he's going to come down and he's going to meet with those people. Now, with that statement being made, here's an insight that I want to give to you that I know I've never given it to you before. As I was meditating on this afternoon, it went boink, and I thought to myself, oh, how have I missed such a simple thought all these years? And the thought was this: When we think of the altar and we think of the burnt offering and the grain offering and the peace offering and the thanksgiving offering and the sin offering and the guilt offering, and we think of all these different offerings, we think of sacrifice. And when we think of sacrifice, we think of blood and we think of gore and we think of sacrifice. But I started thinking about this and I thought, okay, God's presence has now come down into the tabernacle. God's presence is there. The tabernacle has been dedicated. The presence of God is there. Moses can't go in. Aaron can't go in. Nobody can even get close to it. So God says, I have a remedy for this. The remedy is going to be based on where you are in your relationship with me. I'm going to allow you to approach me on that premise. I was looking for the word, on that premise. And you say, well, okay, that sounds good, but what do you mean? Well, for instance, if I was going to bring a burnt offering, a Corban Olah, an ascension offering, I would have to bring it of a bull or a ram or a goat. Or if I was really poor, then I could bring some birds. Okay, great. I can do those things. That's super. But you know what? It's not a sacrifice. Now, the animal will be slaughtered, but it's not a sacrifice. This is the word that God gave to me today. It's an investment. Just think about that for a second. It's an investment. And you go, an investment? Isn't it costing you something? Of course. Have you ever noticed? Have you ever invested in the stock market? Or did you ever buy a piece of property? Did you ever buy a home? Did you ever invest in something? You invested in something. It did cost you something, but what was the purpose for that investment? The purpose for that investment was the hopes that that investment would pay off with being able to provide for you the opportunity to experience something different than what you're currently experiencing. So now the Corban Olah is very, very interesting because this offering is an investment of the greatest magnitude, the greatest magnitude. And the reason that it is because this is the only offering that nobody gets to eat it. See, with the Thanksgiving offering or the grain offering or the peace offering, people get to eat that. The sin offering, the person who brings it, they don't get to eat that. So as I've taught you before, there's really 3 levels of offerings. And so what God does is he gives you and me the opportunity to approach him no matter where we are in our walk with him. We can either approach him on the lowest level of Hatat. And for your notes, that's Chatat, Hatat. You can approach him on that level and he'll allow you to come and he'll meet with you and and that smoke that goes up, he's going to come down and he's going to be there with you. He'll meet you there. If you are meeting him at a higher level and you don't have to deal with transgressions, inadvertent transgressions, feeling guilty about anything, and you move up to a higher level and you bring an offering to him of a peace offering, a Shelamim offering, or a Corban Todah, a Thanksgiving offering like the Passover, then not only are you bringing that, but you're demonstrating your love. Now, this is how love works. Love is never about you giving alone. Love is always about giving and receiving. And the peace offering, as well as the Thanksgiving offering, they're about me taking something that I have and offering it to the Lord, to where the Lord gets to enjoy it, to where the priests get to enjoy it, and everybody in the community gets to enjoy it. So down here, the Hatat, the lower level of approaching God, he still meets with you at the altar. If you're not dealing with that type of stuff and you're coming and saying, you know what, I just want to share my bounty. I want to share my goodness. I want to share the good things of the Lord with not only the ones who teach me and guide me and instruct me and love me, but with everybody around. Peace offering, Shelamim, a whole offering, or a Thanksgiving offering. Fantastic. That's great. Now, what about the person who wants to approach God, but they're at even a higher level? So what about the person that's up here? Well, that's chapter 1. This is Corban Olah. See, the first level has to do with respect. So if I made steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, I'd put the word respect on number 1. And then number 2, I'd put the word love. And then number 3, I would put the word awe. And the reason is because no matter where you are in your walk, you can approach God, but you must approach him on his terms. And just as I shared in the morning study, which would be really, really good of you to go back and to look at those passages, because you're going to say, oh my stars, in the Messianic era, when Yeshua is sitting in Jerusalem, ruling and reigning, his bride with him, the disciples doing what they're doing, ruling and reigning over the 12 tribes of Israel, the nations coming up to Jerusalem to worship the king. All of those realities are going to be visible when they're bringing their korbanot, when they're bringing their offerings, when they're sacrificing the animals, when they're actually investing with the opportunity to draw near to God. Arnold Schwarzenegger, former governor of California, the Incredible Hulk, all the different roles that he's played in Hollywood, the Terminator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He made a comment one time. This was back when I was big into the bodybuilding, weightlifting, training stuff. And he had a statement that he said, I work out so hard in the gym. I work out hard enough until I pass out. Now you have to say, well, was he sacrificing? Well, yeah, sacrificing time, but he was investing. When you are taking something of yours and you're offering it to the Lord in order to draw close to the Lord so that you can come to the altar, so that you can experience the most holy, his presence, like what only Aaron was able to do once every year at Yom Kippur, you're investing. And I think this is really, really important for us to think about in our lives is, what are you spending your time investing in? You're investing in people. You're investing with your time. You're investing with your finances. You're investing with your life. There's a price, but it's not a sacrifice, because to give is better than to receive. And when you're bringing a korbanot, you're bringing an offering, look at all the benefits. First of all, it's like you're going to meet face to face with God. You're going to have a personal encounter with him. That's number 1. Number 2, he's going to provide for you a covering. Number 3, depending on the level of the offering that you bring, is going to determine the intimacy level that you get to experience of his presence. And this is really pretty awesome. So a person who's bringing a bull or a ram or a goat, you know what? They're not sacrificing. They're investing. They're investing with the opportunity of getting the return on their investment, their ROI, the return on their investment of, I'm getting to spend time with God at the altar, at the Holy of Holies, the most holy place. So where we oftentimes say, well, it's sacrifices. Oh, yuck. I'm going, have you ever had that personal encounter with God? You were at a concert, you were at a preaching, you were at a revival, you were somewhere, you were sitting on the edge of a cliff on a high mountain rise, you watched the sunrise, you were sitting the sunset at the ocean, wherever you've been. You ever been there and you just had this sense of like God touching you in a particular way? Could you imagine you purposefully setting that up to where that divine encounter you experienced to a degree that just went, oh, wow, that was an amazing time. That waterfall or that mountain peak covered in snow or those glaciers or those sand dunes or the stars late at night, whatever the case is, it's the awesomeness of God. This is the Corban Olah. Do you remember Sesame Street? You remember one of these things doesn't belong here. One of these things just doesn't belong. Remember the game? Like you might have had, uh, 4 boxes, and you might have had a red balloon that was in a circle. You might have had a red balloon that was in a heart shaped. You might have had a red balloon that was shaped, funny like a dog. And then you might have had just a yellow balloon. And you had to look at that and you had to say, okay, one of these things doesn't belong, but they were all balloons. And so you would obviously pick the yellow balloon. Well, then if I was going to say which ones belong together, you'd say, oh, the red balloons, the 3 red balloons. This is what we call contrasting, comparing and contrasting. When you compare something, you look at the similarities. When you contrast, you look at the differences. Now, one of the challenges that we face as we enter into the book of Leviticus, because for most people, this is not your summertime reading. Definitely not your summertime reading. Because it's just like, how does this even fit into the story? I mean, we had Genesis and Exodus. In Genesis, the creation story and the flood and Abraham and the story of Jacob and the story of Joseph and all of the drama. The book of Exodus, the plagues, delivering the children out of Israel by the blood of the Lamb, their journey into the wilderness, through the sea, manna from heaven, rock, covenant at Mount Sinai, building of the tabernacle, golden calf, adventure, story, narrative, over. And what a story. And then all of a sudden, rules on how to bring your offerings. And you'd say, surely that doesn't fit. But surely it does. Now, here's what I would encourage you to do, and this is what I do. As I'm reading through a text, I go back to my Sesame Street days and I ask myself the question. I say, have I ever heard this before? Where have I seen this before? You play that game with all the cards turned upside down and you flip one over and you say, oh, where did I see that card? And you flip this one over and it's a match. And all of a sudden you can set it aside. Where have I seen that before? That's one of the best questions you can ask yourself as you're reading through the Bible. Now, I know we're strapped on time, so it's tough to be able to find time to really go searching for things in Scripture. But if you just read through it and say, where have I seen this before? So I want to take you to Leviticus chapter 1. And I'm going to ask you the question, where have you seen this before? And I'll bet you dollars to donuts you'll know. Because everything that you find in the book of Leviticus is found back in Genesis and Exodus. But because it seems to be so uniquely describing without the narratives and the dramas and all the things, and just like, okay, bring this animal, lay your hands on it, make these spices, do this, do that, do this. And you just go, ah. But these are laying commentary on the other stories. Now, there's something, it's well known that I'm not a computer guy. In fact, there's a lady in the Ukraine, Lima, precious lady, who is taking all of the available Zoom calls and downloading those onto the internet for YouTube for me. And so she's been working on that all night long. And she just texted me a second ago. And I just say, boy, thank you, Father. It is obvious I'm not the computer guy. I can type, I can think, I can relate. There's a lot of skill sets that I do have, but Knowing all the ins and outs of a computer, that's not it. But one thing I do know about a computer is that they do have these things called hyperlinks. So a hyperlink is like you're going through a passage and then there might be something that's in blue or it might be in underlined, and you scroll on it and you click it. And then what happens is it takes you to another site of something that's identical to it. That's a hyperlink. It's connected to something. Well, the Bible is filled with hyperlinks, but not just hyperlinks. The Bible is filled with hyperlinks that take you from this thought to this thought, and that this thought back here gives you commentary on this thought, and this thought here gives you commentary on that thought. And so then there's a thought within here that hyperlinks to something else, which opens up another venue. And before you know it, you're starting to peel uh, uh, either peel layers off of the onion, discovering things, or you're building a stack of information with a small, limited amount of words. Well, with the Corban Olah, the burnt offering, we're going to do the same. Now, before we begin with this, I'm going to take you over to the book of Ephesians. I want to take you to Ephesians chapter 5. And as you flip over there in your Bible, you're going to see what the Apostle Paul actually commands us to do. And now you say, well, how can I do that? The only way you're going to do it is if you know what Leviticus 1 says. Leviticus 1 tells you how to go about doing it. Here's Ephesians chapter 5. Be ye therefore followers of God as dear children. So imitate God. Okay, I don't know how to do that, but if you're telling me to be an imitator of God, I'll be an imitator of God. And he goes on to say, and walk in love. Now, how do I know if I'm walking in love? Best way to do it is just take 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and look at all those statements and say, am I walking in love? Yes, I am. If you're walking in love, you'll be doing all of those things. And walk in love as Christ also has loved us and has given himself for an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet smelling savor. Do you know what sacrifice? Do you know what korbanot? Do you know what offering was a sweet smelling savor? The Corban Olah, the burnt offering. Now, I want you to go from there, and I want you to flip back to one of the most familiar passages in Romans chapter 12. In Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2, he says, I'm begging you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. When I begin to lay my life down, what I'm doing is I'm investing to draw close to God so he can meet with me and instruct me on how I'm supposed to live like Christ as a sweet smelling savor to God. Now, if we go back to Leviticus chapter 1, keeping humility, Vayikra, the small aleph, in the back of our mind as we read through everything, because what he's doing is he's calling to Moses and he says, Moses, tell the people if they want to approach me, they can approach me. And he called unto Moses and spoke unto him out of the tabernacle of the congregation, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, if any man of you brings an offering unto the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd and of the flock. If his offering is a burnt sacrifice of the herd, and that's what our translation says, burnt sacrifice, but it's a Corban Olah, it's a burnt offering of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own voluntary will at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord. He shall put his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and it shall be accepted for him to make atonement for him, a covering so that he can come into the presence of God. This is not a sin offering. This isn't about sin. Atonement is not all about sin. It's about protection. You remember the very first time that we saw, okay, here's a hyperlink. Remember the very first time that you see atonement, kafir, kippur, pitch, covering, takes you all the way back to Noah's Ark. Noah was told to pitch the ark, kepher, atonement, on the outside and the inside. For what? Because of his sin? No, for his protection. Atonement was for protection so that he could come into the presence of God. Now, this Corban Olah, this burnt offering, now we have to ask ourselves the question, where have I seen this before? Where in the stories of Genesis or Exodus have I seen this before? And if you take into consideration the story of Noah and the atonement, guess where the first story of a burnt offering is? You guessed it. It's back in Genesis. It's the story of Noah. So I'm going to take you back to Genesis, and I want you to look at Genesis chapter 8, and let's pick up the story in verse 20. Now, the reason why I'm going back here is because if I really want to know what a Corban Olah is, then I have to go back to the first time that it's mentioned, and then I need to figure out what was the setting of that. Now, let's take into consideration who Noah is. Noah built an ark. Noah, for 120 years, Noah was evangelizing. Noah had his sons. His sons helped him build an ark. God brought the animals to the ark by twos. All the clean animals were by 14s. And so God brought all the animals, loaded them up on the ark. The door shut. Noah and his family were safe, protected because of the atonement, the kippur, the kepher that was on the outside and on the inside. They were watertight. God had shut the door. No man could open it. Now, Noah has been building an ark for a period of time, and the time frames range in theological perspectives from anywhere from 3 to 5 years, which is what I think, and some people say 120 years, which we know that's not accurate because Noah's sons helped him build the ark after they were born, and Noah didn't start having kids till he was 500. Okay, so, and then the flood came in his 600th year. So we know it's not 120. So I just think that we just go with the flow, and whatever people say, we just say, okay, that makes sense. But there's significance to the numbers and the timing of everything. So now Noah understands that the world is going to be destroyed. God warned him, and so he built an ark to the saving of his house. Now he's on the boat. Now it rains for 40 days and 40 nights. The water is on the earth for 150 days. Then the water begins to abate. Then the dry land appears. And in chapter 8, we go back through virtually step by step by step through the creation story all over again. Until you get to chapter 9, instead of a day of rest, we have a covenant. We have a covenant of the rainbow, which is all about rest. That God is taking a rest from the wrath that he poured out on the earth. But in chapter 8, now Noah gets off the ark. The ground is dry. The door opens up. He comes out. He lets all the animals out, and pick up the story. And Noah built an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. Wow. So why did he do a burnt offering? Why did he do a Corban Olah? I mean, obviously he knew about a Corban Olah before it was actually put into writing. It was put into writing because of the sin of the golden calf. Doesn't mean that they hadn't been doing it in times past. Noah knew that you can only bring a clean animal for a Corban Olah. He knew that it was a burnt offering. He knew that it was going to be completely consumed. He knew that it was 100% for God, where a peace offering and a thanksgiving offering is all about love and sharing and sharing. And a Hatat, a sin offering, and a guilt offering is not about sharing. It's about giving back to the representatives of God because we took something from God. But the Corban Olah is different. It is complete abandonment. So why in the world would he be offering up a Corban Olah? Well, think about what this means from Noah's perspective. From Noah's perspective, he's saying, you know what, God, you're starting over fresh with me. You want me to be fruitful and multiply like you had Adam on the face of the earth. You've got all these animals. I'm offering them up to you. This is all you. I am so small. I'm so insignificant. This is all about you. He recognizes the enormity, the immensity of how nothing is his. When you come to that point in your life where you recognize nothing is yours, I'll step back one step, that nothing is yours except for your honey bunny. That's the one thing God gives to you for you. Everything else is just a stewardship. Now that relationship is stewardship too, but that your honey bunny is for you specifically. And so everything else, it's all yours, God. I can't imagine Noah. I can't imagine the fear of Noah getting off that ark and recognizing all of humanity has been wiped out. No living beings on the earth outside of his own family. And he goes, God, it's all you. Now, the second time that you see this is in Genesis chapter 22. And this is where I want to spend just a hair of time. And as we spend a little bit of time right here, then I want to draw a conclusion for you. So look at chapter 22. And it came to pass after these things that God did test Abraham. And he said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Hineni, here am I. And he said, take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and get into the land of Moriah and offer him there for a what? A Corban Olah. So Noah had a Corban Olah. The next time we have a Corban Olah is with Abraham offering up Isaac. Now here's the difference between the two. The difference between the two is Noah recognizes, oh my stars, everything is yours, God. It's not mine. With Abraham, Abraham's going, wait a minute, wait. You want me to take my son, my only son, and offer him up as a Corban Olah, a burnt offering, something that's totally consumed, offered up to you, something that I don't get to participate in? And you know what's interesting? Immediately, instantaneously, no questions asked, Abraham says, okay. And he does, which is kind of bizarre to me. I mean, seriously, it's bizarre. And you say, well, why? Why do you think it's bizarre, Alan? Because just a few chapters ago, he's begging for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah that God would spare them. But yet he gives up his own son like that? No questions asked? But for these people over here, well, there's a reason. But I mean, to the naked eye, that we don't really think about things, we would just say, that doesn't make any sense at all. You know, are you schizophrenic? Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm schizophrenic, and so am I. How does all that work? Immediately he says, okay, you want me to offer my son as a Corban Olah? I'll offer my son as a Corban Olah. Verse 3. He says, and Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took two of his young men with him and Isaac his son, and he clave the wood for the Corban Olah and rose up and went unto the place of which God had told him. Then on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. Now, that's going to be important for you to understand, because in order to understand the Corban Olah, you have to understand something about seeing. Now, the word for see is the word re'eh. And so you say, okay, well, that's not in my vocabulary necessarily with our Hebrew, but re'eh literally means that I see. And Abraham saw the place afar off. Now remember that, because that's going to be important. So we know that Abraham tells his two young men, stay here. Me and the lad, we're going yonder hill. We're going to worship, and we're going to come back together again with you. Abraham and Isaac have a conversation, which, by the way, and ironically, and how strange that this is the only recorded conversation we have in the Bible between Abraham and Isaac. Isn't that crazy? The day that he's getting ready to be offered up as a Corban Olah is the only day that we have a recorded conversation between the father and the son. Doesn't mean they didn't talk. I'm just saying it's not recorded anywhere in the Bible except for here. Now he says, all right, we're going to come back together, boys and girls. So he binds Isaac, lays him on the wood, is getting ready to slay him. And Abraham, verse 10, stretched forth his hand, took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Hanani, here am I. Now remember, he's already said, hey, Abraham. And he goes, here am I. Now he's going, Abraham, Abraham. 2 times. He goes, I'm here. I'm here. He says, don't lay a hand upon the lad, neither do anything unto him, for now I know that you fear God. And you see that word fear right there? That word for fear is the same word fundamentally as the word to see. Now I know that you yirah, re'eh, yirah. Now I know that you fear God. Yereh, re'eh, to see, re'eh, yereh, you fear. Now the word for fear there is more like awe. I remember the very first time that I looked at an amoeba underneath the microscope. Now, you collect your pond water and you put it on a slide and put the cover slip on it. And, you find it on 4x and then you go to 10x and then you go to 40x. And all of a sudden you're seeing a heartbeat on the inside and you're seeing vacuoles and food digest and all kinds of things and little cilia. And the closer I got to that magnification, the more in awe I was. Versus like a cheap parlor trick, from a distance, the sleight of hand is not easy to see, but you get up close and you go, oh, I see how you did that, how that did that trick. Some things, when you get closer to it, it makes you stand in awe. Some things you get closer to and you go, oh, that's not awesome at all. There's a connection between seeing and fearing. There's a combination of the two. What does it mean to see and to fear? And how is this connected with the Corban Olah? When I begin to see that everything that I have belongs to God. And whenever I trust God with that, even the thing that I would consider rightly belongs to me. I gave birth to that. I conceived that child. I brought that child forth. I raised that child. And now God is wanting his child. Why did Abraham give it so freely? I'll tell you why I think. Because he recognized God as the ultimate father. He recognized that God's the one who gives and God's the one who takes away. He's the one who says, I provided for this. I'm the rightful owner of that child. Can I have my child? And Abraham goes, instantaneously, he's yours. See, the first 2 times we have Corban Olah in Scripture, it's about individuals yielding up everything. And as they yield up everything, look what takes place. Noah yields up these animals as Corban Olah, recognizing, oh God, this is all yours. I mean, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. You are amazing. You're worthy of praise and worship. I'm giving you all my focus and attention, and this is for your glory. And this ascending offering, I pray that's a sweet smelling savor in your nostrils. I pray that you're able to discern that it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And God is pleased. Abraham, on the other hand, oh, my stars, you're asking for my son, didn't even question it. His heart was so consumed with God that he said, okay, you're my father. You're my spiritual father. You're the one who birthed me. You're the one who gives me life. Okay, if you're asking for him, he's actually yours. You've just got him to me on loan. That's Corban Olah. Now go back to Leviticus chapter 1. And let's look at the significance of this and how does this apply to me? Now, Not everybody brings a Corban Olah, though I'm supposed to on a daily basis. A Tamid offering, as you know from the book of Exodus and from the book of Romans chapter 8, you know the Tamid offering is me offering myself up as a Corban Olah in the morning and offering myself up as a Corban Olah in the evening. You know that to be true. That's not easy to do. It's not easy because I want me. I want what I want rather than giving myself up for him. But he's asking that of me every day. We saw that in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Because that's what Yeshua did. Yeshua said, I'm giving up my life. He goes every day, I'm giving up my life. That's not easy to do. Life is scary. Life is difficult. Life has questionable things that just go, how's this going to work out? It's tough. I didn't say it was easy. But this is when you reach that point or when you do that type of offering, there's something about the intimacy that God meets you at. Now let's take a look at what happens. And this will be very familiar to you. So I'm going to remind you of what you already know. In Leviticus chapter 1, picking up here in verse 8, after we have taken this animal, we've laid our hands on this animal, we've fully identified with this animal so that we can come into the presence of God at the altar so that we can experience his presence like the Holy of Holies. And then he goes on and he says, okay, verse 8, verse 8. And the priest, Aaron's sons, shall lay the parts, the heads and the fat, in order upon the wood that is on the fire, which is upon the altar. So now they're going to lay the parts, the head, and the fat in order upon the wood. But his inwards and his legs shall he wash in water. So he's going to take out everything from the inside and his legs, and the priest shall burn all on the altar to be a burnt sacrifice, Corban Olah, an offering made by fire of sweet savor to the Lord. And if his offering, let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah. And if his offering be of the flocks, namely of the sheep or of the goats, for a side of the altar northward before the Lord, and the priest Aaron's sons shall sprinkle his blood round about the altar. He shall cut it into his pieces with his head, his fat. The priest shall lay them in order on the wood that is on the fire, which is upon the altar. He shall wash the inwards and the legs with water, and the priest shall bring it and burn it upon the altar. It is a Corban Olah, an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. Now, when you look at this, you see that he has something special going on. What he's going to do is he's going to take that Corban Olah and he's going to split it open from the chin all the way down to the groin. Now he's going to take out all of the inwards and he's going to lay them on the altar. And then he's going to take the head and he's going to take the legs and he's going to put those together like this. So now you've got an animal that's laying on its sides with its head and its legs together like this. The insides have been taken out. So all of the insides are now taken out and they're washed and they're put on the altar separately. So now the animal has been completely, completely exposed from the inside, from the jaw, down the throat, down the chest, the sternum, down through the abdominals, down through the groin area, and filleted open, just like if you were doing a deer. Completely open, cleaned out, everything's washed and going to be burned. What is he giving us a picture of? He's not just taking the animal and saying, well, why do we need to even cut him open up his inside, wash his insides, separate the inside? Because he's trying to teach us something about the Corban Olah. He's trying to teach us something about how our head and how our walk should be together. The way that we think and the way that we walk should be together. To allow him to take those areas that, in the chest, whether it's the heart or whether of the liver, some of the organs, they're protected by the rib cage, either in the front or in the back. And so he says, I'm going to take all those parts that you normally protect, guarding your heart, your stomach, your liver, your lungs, all those parts that you protect naturally. And he says, I want those exposed. I don't want anything to be concealed. I want everything to be open. The emotions, the bowels, the intestines, all of the filtering organs down in the lower part of the body, the reproductive organs, they're all coming out. Nothing's left on the inside. Everything's exposed. Everything. You know what? I'm just not concerned about you giving up everything. I'm concerned about you giving up everything from the inside out. And that's what he asks us to do. The Corban Olah, that's not an easy one to do. Now, what that doesn't mean is it doesn't mean I go sell all that I've got and give to the poor. That's not, Scripture nowhere teaches that. The Gospels nowhere teach that, okay? Contrary to what some might believe. Nowhere does the Bible teach that within context or within storyline ever. It's interpreted that way, like the rich young ruler, go sell what you have and give it to the poor. He didn't say, go sell all that you have. Go sell what you have that's keeping you bound up and get rid of those things and give to the poor, because you need to loosen up some of that wealth so that you can actually make a difference in the lives of other people. That's what God wants. He wants me to invest my life, my time, from the chin to the groin. Allow him to wash with the water of the word, to be placed upon the altar, to be consumed completely. My heart, it's not running my agenda. My lungs, the breath is from God. All my internal organs, those are functional from God. They belong to him. That's a Corban Olah. Corban Olah, anybody could bring it. And you didn't have to be wealthy. You could actually bring some birds. You could catch some birds. You could trap some birds and say, I just want to make sure that when I approach God, I approach him at the highest level possible. It's not about money. It's about insights, about heart, and how much do you want to invest in order to be able to have that encounter with God. That's why we're going to see all these coming again in the Messianic era, in the millennial kingdom. God's going to reinstitute them all. Some people want to spiritualize it, but I had somebody a few weeks ago spiritualizing it to me, and so I asked them, I said, so do you believe that Jesus is physically coming back? I mean, like physically coming back, like he said in Acts chapter 1, he said, boys and girls, I'm going up into the heavens. Cloud's going to receive me into the clouds. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to be there, but I'm coming again in like manner, and I'm going to set foot here on the Mount of Olives again, the same place that I left. And I asked the person, I said, do you believe that Jesus is physically going to come back? And the man said, oh, yeah. I said, so you believe that Jesus is going to come back, but you don't believe that the physical sacrifices are going to be reinstituted again for the physical king, which the scripture tells us over and over and over again is going to happen? Well, no, that's just spiritual. I go, okay. God uses the natural things to teach us the spiritual. 1 Corinthians 15:46. That's what God does. From the creation story, he uses the natural to teach us the spiritual. From Mount Sinai, he teaches the natural to teach us the spiritual. From the bread that comes from heaven, the natural to teach us the spiritual. The water that comes from the rock, the blood of the lamb on the doorpost, the physical to teach us the spiritual. God's constantly doing that. Today, we don't have a temple. no temple, no priesthood. We do have an altar, but hasn't been established yet. Sacrifices, the Corban Olah, are going to happen again. And when they do, you're going to see life from a different perspective completely. That might be where we separate the boys from the girls and those who want to cut bait and those who really want to fish. The difference between the sheep and the goats, the difference between the wheat and the tares. I have a feeling that in that day, you're going to see things really unfold and people are going to be stretched. They're going to be stretched. And immediately they're going to say, well, that's the Antichrist. And then some are going to say, well, that's Christ. But there's going to be a lot of confusion. That's why we spend our time teaching the Torah every week with hopes, literally hopes, that we'll glean something and be able to say, let me meditate on this and think about this a little bit. Let me think about this and let me watch to see what's going to take place and how God wants to speak to me, to show me how I can invest with my life, to be drawn closer to Him so I can have a personal encounter with Him in order to be able to take it back into the camp and say, there's nothing like our God. That's the bomb diggity. That's the Corban Olah. Lots to think about as you go off to sleep tonight. And I hope and pray that it's a great evening for you, a great evening of rest and refreshment and just meditating on these things in the Word, because the New Testament commands us to be burnt offerings. Maybe I need to understand. Maybe, God, I need to let you examine my heart, my lungs, my inside a little bit, and to make sure that the inside is completely washed by the water of the Word. It's a good thought for us to end on for the evening. I'll finish the call and open it up for any comments or questions.